going on, everybody? Welcome into the Wednesday, January 15th, 2025 edition of the Daily Energy Newsbeat Stand-Up. Here are today's top headlines. First up, rethinking the global electricity debate, why reliable power matters more for economic growth. We'll then go abroad. Iran-Russia treaty signals deepening ties and defiance of West. A lot of interesting energy stuff that goes into this. We'll come back home. Trump will end U.S. passivity in the Western Hemisphere. Notice a theme here, guys. And finally, next up, U.S. LNG prepares for boom years under Trump. I wonder who's been saying that for the past 6 weeks.
Wow.
Maybe me. I'll pat myself on the back later. And then finally, 2025 brings fundamentals back to the forefront in the oil markets. I'm going to disagree slightly with this article, but this will be a good one. Stu will then toss over to me. I will quickly cover what has happened in the oil and gas markets, and finally talk slightly about a publicly available deal got done. So dry January is officially over here on the 15th.
Nice.
We will cover all that and a bag of chips, guys. As always, I'm Michael Tanner, joined by Stuart Turley. Where do you want to begin?
Hey, let's start over here with rethinking global electricity debate, why reliable power matters for economic growth. This one, I got to give a shout out. This is for Ronald Stein. I'm visiting with him later in the week as well, too. He is a good friend of the show, and this is a very important point. This follows along why Germany, you've heard me talk about this a bunch, Germany has been failing. You go green energy without baseline, and here it is, without baseline energy of nuclear or natural gas, you fail. And this article really comes up into a beautiful, lays it out very nicely. The world faces another critical crossroads with heated debate on the role of crude oil, renewables, nuclear power in driving future growth. You got to have oil. There's 6,000 products made with oil that you can't make out of a windmill. Renewables. You got to have baseline power or renewables don't work. Nuclear. It's a great baseline, but you can't get there without in the United States because of the regulatory problems. Anyway, this is a great article. It talks about, goes from fire to nuclear. So I love this. Well done.
No, absolutely. We love us some Ronald Stein. Highly recommend checking this out. And I think it's such a good point. People think, oh, well, we're moving to electric cars. We won't need crude oil. It's like, have you gone to the hospital recently? Have you, all the other sub products that oil is used in? And you said it perfectly. Can't make it out of a wind farm.
Can't make it out of a wind farm. Hey, let's roll over to Iran-Russia treaty signals deepening ties of defiance of the West. There is more to this than you can shake a stick at. Russia and Iran will sign a comprehensive strategic partnership treaty on Friday, focusing on defense and security cooperation. This is very important, especially when you consider the close ties that Russia has been developing and quietly developing with Japan. Yes, you heard me say that. You heard they are developing them with also South Korea. You heard me say that as well. North Korea and Asia. And this is coming into the whole shifting of power is rolling right along through. So this is a huge development when you talk about both of these guys. Both countries are in OPEC plus, and both countries are huge in the shadow fleet in avoiding sanctions.
Yeah, and the interesting part is, they're both under intense U.S. sanctions, and the real question is what, from an energy standpoint, does this help them get around those sanctions via Iran? Iran's probably going to have an easier time getting around the sanctions if they partner up with Russia. How that all works, I don't know, but I think it's something super interesting to watch. Also, it's just also not great that they're teaming up. That creates kind of an interesting monolith there in the Middle East.
It does. And anyway, and believe it or not, we forced Putin's hand to do this. So this is all based on lousy geopolitical from the current administration. Let's go to the next story, Michael. Trump will end his U.S. passive. I can't even say this. Thank you. I went to Oklahoma State University, and we can barely spell U.S. passivity in the Western Hemisphere. I'm wearing a Oklahoma State T-shirt here for everybody. Okay, now prioritizing the Americas after decades of neglect returns to traditions and a U.S. strategy. This is an excellent article, beginning with Jimmy Carter's decision to abandon the Panama Canal in 1970s and all the way through. I am just going to give a little shout out here. I'm interviewing Christopher Messina, who wrote the book Messina's Federal Budget, and he was in the room with President Trump when they were talking about Greenland and the advantages of there. So when you take a look at what China and Russia are doing to Greenland and what China is doing to the port or the Panama Canal, President Trump is not putting up with any of this stuff. And this is an outstanding article kind of laying out what he's going to be doing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is going to be more aggressive on, sticking up for American interests. We're going to see a lot of tariffs. We know Canada is already bracing. Their energy business is bracing for a huge amount of tariffs, specifically on what comes into the United States. We know China is already doing that. So I think what this will do is this hopefully will strengthen, from an energy standpoint, strengthen the United States energy production and strengthen our energy position, and have us focus on how much of our oil can we drill, produce, and actually use and consume here at home versus shipping a lot of it abroad.
And I'll tell you, when I'm going to be I'm working on a couple articles, and one of them is Hawaii. Hawaii's 67% of Hawaii's electrical is by, Michael, fuel oil. The worst.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, the worst kind of pollutant you possibly can do. And you sit there and kind of go, why are we allowing? I mean, I'm not a fuel oil kind of guy. That's expensive. And you would think you'd have an LNG facility there. Anyway, that's for that's for our new energy secretary to try to make Hawaii great again. Let's go to the next story. U.S. LNG prepares for under Trump. What do you think, Michael?
Well, I can't say I told you so on this one, but I would completely agree with this article from the standpoint of, when, people kept saying drill, baby, drill. Oh, oil production is going to go crazy. I don't think so. I think drill, baby, drill, and I've been saying this now for weeks, is code for less regulation. Regulation has not affected oil companies from drilling new wells. Really, it hasn't. Even offshore. All the offshore that's being drilled right now was permitted even under the Biden administration, because under that 2022 act, they were required to hold, if they were going to do offshore wind leases, they had to offer offshore oil and gas leases, and they did that. So where Biden really hurt was the ban on new LNG permits, which could be a way to unlock the natural gas business in the United States. There are large private equity companies that are gambling everything on this. We won't name them, Kimmeridge, but and so this code in this, I don't want to, maybe code's the wrong word, but this take of LNG exports leading to a resurgence of natural gas was what I think was code for drill, baby, drill. Or vice versa. Drill, baby, drill was code for let's get rid of regulation and let's allow the U.S. LNG industry to thrive, because, one, that actually does allow us to make more oil, because a lot of the times if there's no – if we have no end consumption for – it's not like you can just put natural gas in a tank and let it sit there. Not quite how it works. You got to use it. So that means if there's nowhere to take it, you can't put it into a pipeline, meaning the wells that are producing natural gas or even producing oil with natural gas as a byproduct can't produce because they don't have anywhere to put their gas. So,
well, there's a couple big things in here. The U.S. LNG export capacity is expected to double over the next 5 years. That's a lot of new LNG coming online. That is an incremental 1.3 trillion boost to the U.S. economy through 2040. This is extremely huge. But here's where I want to also, so many talking heads will sit there and say that they can replace European, Russian natural gas for U.S. LNG. It does not work that way. They're not even the same. A Russian natural gas is a 700%, whatever the number is, cheaper. You cannot compare the two. Let's roll to the next one here. 2025 brings fundamentals back to the fore in oil markets. This is actually from Irina Slav over there at Oil Price. Quote, humans did have more success in 2024 than algos, which is different than the last couple of years. A CIBC private wealth group holds senior energy trader Rebecca Babin told Bloomberg it could probably be argued that 2024 saw the point of saturation with algo trading on the oil market. You and I have talked about this a lot, and that is something weird's going on with trading. I mean, it used to be a tanker would blow up and people would, oil price would spike for a while. Now it was like, who cares?
Yeah, I mean, I agree and disagree with this article. Yes, we saw a lot of algo trading in 2024. The real question is, we were 14 days into 2025, and the real question is, there's not enough data for me to say, yeah, it's gonna change. Yeah, we've dropped we've dropped over 50%, but we've just dropped from 4% to 2%. Only 14 days, 15 days into the year. This could clearly go back up. It was a loss-making year for the algo traders, which was a second, as Bloomberg reported, it's their second year in a row they've done that, because a lot of these, these algos were betting on a demand slump in China and an oversupply thanks to a bunch of OPEC spare capacity. Didn't quite work, though.
And they did not see the huge demand from India come in.
Absolutely. CBI Private Wealth Group senior energy trader Rebecca Babin, her quote is, humans did have more success in 24 than the algos, which is different than the last couple of the years. So the question is, will that switch? I don't know. There's always the phrase, a blind mice finds cheese every once in a while. So was it just a bad year for the algos? Will that change? Again, I think it's way too early. To tell. We have seen, again, oil prices move up, which you could argue is part of some of that algorithmic trading, even though we have seen their total share of trading gone down. It'll be super interesting.
Cool.
It'll be super interesting.
Something to track.
No, we will definitely keep track. Let's move over to finance, Stu. But before we do that, as always, we got to pay the bills here. Thank you for checking us out here on the world's greatest website, energynewsbeat.com. All the quote-unquote news and analysis that you've just heard is brought to you by said website. Stu and the team do a tremendous job keeping that website up to speed. Everything you need to know to be the tip of the spear when it comes to the energy and the oil and gas business. Go ahead and hit that description below. All the links to the timestamps, links to the articles, and also go ahead and hit us up on Substack, theenergynewsbeat.substack.com. The best way to support the show is go ahead and sign up for a paid subscription, which gives you access to, Stu, you just wrote an article that got thrown up there?
Yeah, I did. It was a pretty good one. It was on, it's the beginning of about 5 different articles I'm working on electricity and natural gas, and it's pretty fun.
Great. Well, give us a little tease on it.
Well, I did not know that California, and when you sit back and take a look at how much stuff comes from California, where does California get its crude oil and subsequently its oil and gas diesel? Imports to California: Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, Ecuador, Guyana, Colombia, Canada, Mexico, the United Arab Emirates. Do you know how bad this is for them to put all of that oil on ships and haul it all around the world for emissions? What do you think?
No, it's super. As always, you hit the nail on the head with going back and going that second, third, fourth level deep and not just covering the surface. So no, I think it's wild.
It's crazy. It is unbelievable. Biodiesel is absolutely a waste of energy, by the way. Just thought I'd let you know.
Absolutely. But go check us out. Subscribe to us on Substack, theenergynewsbeat.substack.com. As always, guys, you can also check us out, investinoil.energynewsbeat.com. It's never too early to get ahead on your 2025 taxes, and it's also never too early to start receiving some sweet monthly dividends via owning working interest in oil and gas. We can send you all the information and a great little ebook that we've put together that can kind of cover a little bit about what we are talking about. And so you can do that, investin oil.energynewsbeat.com. We'll send you all the information. Let's go ahead, Stu, and just quickly look. Top line indices, S&P 500, NASDAQ, both flat as we record this. Market's about to close here. 2 and 10-year yields. The 2-year yield dropped about 0.6 of a percentage point. 10-year yield basically flat. Dollar index down about 0.2 of a percentage point. Bitcoin fairly, actually up a little bit. It's over $96,400, $500. Crude oil was down about 1.6 percentage points, 77.51. Brent oil dipped below 80, 79.87. That's down about 0.5 percentage point. Natural gas up about 1.2 percentage points after falling off a cliff yesterday. It was all the way, I wouldn't say falling off a cliff, but opening above $4.30, closing that day around $3.80. We're now up about to $3.97. Our XOPMP contract was up about 0.2 of a percentage point, 142.28. Mainly what's going on with prices is the EIA dropped a U.S. energy demand forecast that basically says there's going to be a steady oil demand in 2025, but that decline was limited by new U.S. sanctions, both on Russian exports and key buyers, both in India and China. So it is basically what we're seeing here is that oil demand in the U.S. is going to remain steady at 20.5 million barrels per day in 2025 and 2026, but oil output for the nation would rise to 13.5 million barrels per day, and an increase of that previous forecast by about 300,000 barrels a day, which was sitting at 13.52. Phil Flynn, he's a senior analyst over at Price Futures Group. He said the markets were anticipating the EIA short-term energy outlook to see if a predicted gain in supply would be reversed, but it didn't happen. So basically they're waiting to see what the EIA predicted, which still flipped everything. Analysts are also expecting these new sanctions on Russian oil to erase about 700,000 barrel per day surplus they had in their forecast, but the real impact could be lower. So I think that's a lot of what you're seeing on this recent price increase. On that, we're also, on the natural gas side, I think a lot of people are just, cold weather continues to kind of surface here. And as we enter the winter months, we're definitely seeing a little bump in prices. Real quick, we finally got a publicly, it's a deal between two privates, but we did get a press release on a deal. Langford Energy Partners enters the Midland Basin with its acquisition from Murchison Oil and Gas.
Nice.
It's we do love Murchison Oil and Gas. I've got a few friends over there, so I know personally their acreage is really good. They've this deal included about 8,000 net acres, which is primarily Midland and Howard County, a little bit of Borden. Production of about 7,200 BOE per day from about 63 operated wells. A decent amount of delineated drilling locations that is available. Full infrastructure that's built there. We did not get a sale price. I've heard a few numbers get floated around, but I don't necessarily want to tout them out. But great deal, I think, for both sides. I think they'll both figure this out from the standpoint of good deal. But we finally, dry January is over, Stu. We did get a deal, and if maybe we might look at this deal a little bit more if we do find anything interesting. But that's really all I got, Stu. Anything else we're missing? What should people be thinking about before we close?
Just keep your head on a swivel. We were approaching the 20th with the inauguration coming on board.
Yeah, we're going to need to. So, guys, we appreciate everybody checking us out here on the world's greatest podcast. For Stuart Turley, I'm Michael Tanner. We'll see you tomorrow, folks.